Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston, and today we're taking a look at John chapter 11. We've seen Jesus teaching and healing people in the temple in Judea and in Galilee and all over the surrounding regions. And many of these teachings and healings have intentionally taken place at the same time as a Jewish festival or celebration. And yet still the Pharisees have rejected Jesus and his mission. They've tried on multiple occasions to kill him, and it forced Jesus to flee beyond the Jordan. It seems like Jesus has evaded death every single time, but can he keep escaping it? This chapter will give us a hint of what's to come at the climax of the gospel story. Yes, Jesus has wisdom to teach and power to heal, but he also has authority over death itself. This has been a recurring theme throughout John, but in this chapter we'll see that it's not just a metaphor. But what does it mean for Jesus' disciples who trust him through suffering? What does that mean for us as humans doomed to die? Now, a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was the Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So the sisters sent word to him, saying, "Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick." But when Jesus heard this, he said, "This sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it." Jesus is still beyond the Jordan, and he gets word that his friend Lazarus is sick. He lives in Bethany, a city in Judea. Now, John the author discloses how this Lazarus is the brother of Mary and Martha, the same Mary who would become famous for her actions later in John's Gospel. Mary and Martha send word to Jesus that he whom he loves is sick, showing the deep relationship that Jesus has personally with this family. However, Jesus insists that Lazarus will get better. His sickness and suffering will ultimately be for the purpose of glorifying God. It's similar to what he said in John 9 about the man who was born blind. He was healed so that God's works could be done in the world. So surely Jesus means that he will go and heal Lazarus, right? Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he then stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. The juxtaposition in these two verses is pretty startling. Jesus really loved Lazarus, so when he heard he was sick, he waited 2 more days before going to visit him. It doesn't really make sense, but it points to the sovereignty of God's timetable, as well as challenging our trust in him. Do we really trust Jesus when he says that Lazarus' sickness will not end in death, but end in glorifying God? Then after this, he said to his disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and you are going there again?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him." This he said, and after that he said to them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go so that I may awaken him out of sleep." The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover." Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought he was speaking of literal sleep. So Jesus then said to them plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Therefore Thomas, who is called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go, so that we may die with him." As he did back in John chapter 7, Jesus ultimately decides to intervene, to travel to Judea again. And he's going down with the purpose of healing Lazarus. Now, this shocks the disciples at first. They figured they weren't immediately going to Bethany because the Pharisees were seeking to kill them in Judea. Remember, Jesus has already escaped death at their hands 3 times. And when questioned on this, Jesus says he's not worried at all. He's walking in the light of the day, not in the darkness of the night. Remember that light imagery was used in John chapters 1, 3, and 8, and described Jesus and his followers as illuminated and enlightened. They are able to see the path of following God, and they don't need to worry about anything that might trip them up. Jesus is saying that he is fully confident in God's ability to protect him, and confident that Lazarus is only asleep. Now, of course, the disciples try to use that as another excuse to not go to Judea, which prompts Jesus to say that Lazarus actually is plainly dead. But Jesus going down will be very important so that they can believe future events to come. All of this prompts Thomas, who is called Didymus, which means the twin, to backhandedly declare his faith in Jesus. He is willing to follow Jesus into Judea, even if it means his death. But he has no framework to see how anything else could occur from this journey. So when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. Martha, therefore, when she heard that Jesus was coming, went to meet him, but Mary stayed at the house. Martha then said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." Jesus and the disciples turn up in Bethany near Jerusalem, and we also hear that some of the Jews and Pharisees have come out for Lazarus' funeral. So we should be expecting that something dramatic will go down. Meanwhile, Martha leaves the house to meet Jesus on the way to Bethany. At first, it seems like she's blaming Jesus for not coming sooner. However, she still professes faith in him, saying that he is one with God the Father. And Martha finds herself in this kind of weird position that is really easy to fall into when we lose a loved one. It might not shake our belief in Jesus as the Messiah, as God who came in human flesh and died for our sins and rose from the dead. But it might actually make us question how much he cares about us and our families and our loved ones. Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I have believed that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world." Jesus takes this time to reassure Martha, saying that Lazarus will rise again. And Martha dismisses it as a cliche. Kind of like saying, "Oh, well, he's in a better place," right? It might be true, but it doesn't make that grief any less real. However, Jesus doesn't give up in trying to comfort Martha, and he gives his 5th I am statement in the Gospel of John. This time he says he is the resurrection and the life. Only through him will people be able to live after death. And it will be through his own resurrection that new creation life will break through into this current reality. Jesus asks Martha if she believes this. And Martha, again, professes her faith in Jesus as the Christ, the Messiah, the one sent from God. And once again, it shows that healing and salvation and resurrection and life are never separate from faith in Jesus. When she had said this, she went away and called Mary, her sister, saying secretly, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." And when she heard it, she got up quickly and was coming to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and consoling her, when they saw that Mary got up quickly and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Therefore, when Mary came where Jesus was, she saw him and fell at his feet, saying to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and was troubled, and said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. So the Jews were saying, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not this man, who opened the eyes of the blind man, have kept this man also from dying?" So eventually, Mary hears that Jesus has arrived, and she rushes out to fall at his feet. It's another touching picture of ultimate faith in him. The rest of the crowd follows Mary, and Jesus asks to be taken to the tomb. And importantly, they all share a moment of grieving together. Even Jesus, knowing how the story will end, takes time to grieve and weep over his friend that died. Now, the crowd still has mixed feelings about Jesus. Some say that his tears are proof for his love for Lazarus. Others say that it's all performative. He didn't actually heal the man when he had the chance. But it doesn't matter what other people say. What does Jesus do? So Jesus, again being deeply moved within, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Remove the stone." Martha, the sister of the deceased, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be a stench, for he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not say to you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they removed the stone. And Jesus raised his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but because of the people standing around, I said it, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth." The man who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face was wrapped around with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." When they're at the tomb, Jesus demands that the stone blocking the entrance be moved to the side. At first, this draws hesitancy from Martha, who is worried about the stink that would come from the body. And on top of that, she surely doesn't want to relive the pain of losing her brother. But Jesus asks Martha to trust him, and she does. It's another example of healing and salvation being directly linked to faith and trust in Jesus. Then Jesus prays a prayer out loud, specifically commenting how he's doing it out loud so that the people around him would believe that he is from God. And then he commands Lazarus to get up and walk out of the tomb, and he does. Now what's interesting is that Lazarus didn't just wake up out of a coma or anything like that. His face is still wrapped in burial linens, meaning he would have suffocated if he wasn't actually dead. Nevertheless, God's breath of life fills his lungs again, and Jesus shows his sovereign power over life and death. When Lazarus comes forward, Jesus commands that they unbind him, literally meaning for them to take off his burial wrappings. But by using the words unbind him, he's figuratively showing the freedom from the slavery of sin and death that Jesus promised to deliver back in John 8. This is the 7th and final miracle before Jesus' death in John's gospel account, and it marks the halfway point in his narrative. Therefore, many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw what he had done believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them the things which Jesus had done. Therefore the chief priests and the Pharisees convened a council and were saying, "What are we doing? For this man is performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, all men will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you take into account that it is expedient for you that one man die for the people, and that the whole nation not perish." Now he did not say this on his own initiative, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but in order that he might also gather together into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. So from that day on, they planned together to kill him. Therefore Jesus no longer continued to walk publicly among the Jews, but went away from there to the country near the wilderness, into a city called Ephraim, and there he stayed with the disciples. Naturally, raising a person from the dead brings controversy for Jesus. Many people believe in Jesus because of this awe-inspiring miracle, and others are more afraid of the social and political implications of it. The Pharisees and priests have no other choice but to plot, because if Jesus keeps raising people from the dead, the Roman Empire is going to take notice. If that were to happen, the Romans would surely crush all of the Jews just to stamp out this revolutionary necromancer. But what it shows is that they don't actually have faith in the God of the universe who is so clearly unified with Jesus. If Jesus can raise people from the dead, then surely nothing, not even the Roman Empire in all of its strength, could stop him. Caiaphas, the high priest, convinces the rest of the council that Jesus must die. That's the only way the rest of the Jews can live according to the current status quo. Now, Caiaphas actually has his own nefarious intentions behind this. He's trying to prove himself as a prophet, since he had recently prophesied that Jesus will die for the nation. But what's interesting is that he proves to be a little bit prophetic. Jesus will die for the nation, and he will die for the gathering of God's children. But it will not look anything like how Caiaphas expects. And due to all this pressure, Jesus and his disciples once again retreat to a remote village in Judea. Now the Passover of the Jews was near, and many went up to Jerusalem out of the country before the Passover to purify themselves. So they were seeking for Jesus, and were saying to one another as they stood in the temple, "What do you think? That he will not come to the feast at all?" Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was to report it, so that they might seize him. The final verses in this chapter set up the next. It's the week before Passover, and all the buzz in Jerusalem is surrounding whether Jesus will show up or not. And of course the Pharisees are ready, lying in wait to arrest the Son of Man. And their plot will actually succeed. It will result in Jesus' death. But as we've seen from Lazarus' resurrection, Jesus has power over death. And for those who believe in Jesus, we receive those same benefits of resurrection life too. We have the promise and the hope of new creation, living in fellowship with God the Father always through Jesus the Son. But like Mary and Martha, we have to trust him completely. We have to fall at his feet, worshiping him and confessing him as the Christ, the Messiah. We have to abide in him. Thanks for watching 1189. I hope that you have a good day, and God bless.